Hi, sports fans. I know it's been a while since I have been on. However, I just wanted to bring you a few updates and try to get myself back into the swing of my videos. The holidays kind of got me behind, and some personal matters also got me a little bit behind, but we're back on track moving forward. With the Mexico Sports Chat, we're going to look at some big upcoming things. I know I got behind, talking about the Eagles. Well, we're still looking, Eagles are still looking for an OC. Are there some viable candidates out there? Some of the best have already went elsewhere, Dayball, McDaniel, those guys have signed elsewhere. Stefanski, Philly boy, we were hoping he might come in. Um, I don't agree with the rhetoric that the Eagles are um, looking, or is not a desirable job, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I take that as a falsehood. It's not, I think it is a very desirable job. I think the one holdup may be is whether or not you got to run Sirianni's system or you can bring in your own system. Um, I think looking for an OC who can bring in their own system would be a shakeup that the Eagles offense needs. Um, Schefter kind of threw out there that there were some other announcements coming from the Eagles. The one that's gotten the biggest no from me is Vic Fangio going elsewhere and retiring. Um, Lane Johnson possibly retiring. AJ Brown being traded. So we'll have to wait and see where those things go. But, I don't want to perpetuate those rumors. Um, but I could see Lane Johnson retiring. I mean, he's spent most of the year banged up, and maybe that list frank fracture was something that he's not going to be able to recover from. So on to other news. Let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. Got to throw that out there. Drake May and the Patriots versus the Seahawks and Sam Darnold. What a whirlwind, career Sam Darnold has had from, third pick over on the draft to NFL bust to getting a second chance with the Vikings um, to really make an impact, and now with the Seahawks. So I wonder what's going through, the Vikings' minds right now. Did we let Sam go too soon? Should we have held on to him, considering the injuries to JJ McCarthy? But we'll have more of that coming up on a Super Bowl preview video. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is, the MVP candidates. To me, hands down, even though they bowed out of the playoffs, the Rams, I think it's Stafford. I think he's had an incredible year. He's had an incredible run this year with leading the league in passing, um, very few interceptions. Um, he's just had a great year. Puka Nakua helps. Devonta Adams helps. I was kind of hoping for Adams to get his Super Bowl finally, but that didn't work out for him. Did see that he was pretty devastated by that. But anyway, back to Stafford. I think he's had a worthy career. I think he's had a Hall of Fame worthy career. He was just stuck in Detroit for the biggest chunk of it. So people are now finally seeing what he can do on a national stage, being with the Rams the last, 5, 6 years. So I think, Stafford's not done. I think hopefully he's got one more year in him. How do you retire coming off an MVP season? Or who knows, maybe that's a great way to go out. But he's my overwhelming favorite for MVP. I think Drake May's got a future ahead of him. Um, and I think that he has a chance of winning an MVP at some point in the future. I just don't think it should be this year. Other MVP candidates, I think Josh Allen, he was up for MVP. I don't think he played like an MVP at times during the season. So I don't think that, he deserves many votes. I know the voting supposedly closed week 18, or week 17, but I think that that's kind of bogus. I think some of these votes are going to get counted after that, which is going to be what helps Drake May. McCaffrey, it's never going to go to a running back. I see him getting like maybe offensive player of the year. Um, Trevor Lawrence, no. I think there's still too many people out there that want to see him do it more than one year. Although his coach, Liam Cohen, I think is a strong candidate for coach of the year. He took a team that nobody expected anything out of and, got them into the playoffs. Played pretty well. First game, second game, of course, Jags lose. Um, so I think that that's kind of going there. The other guys for coach of the year, like I said, Liam Cohen, I think he is a strong candidate. I also think, this was the job Mike Vrabel's done in with New England as much as we all had Patriot fatigue, um, for a long time, I think is has kind of deserved it. You took a team that was 4-13, and now you're in the playoffs. Now you're in the Super Bowl. Of course, at the end of the season, didn't know they were going to be Super Bowl contenders. But I think with Vrabel, he's probably the strongest candidate. I think of this group, him and Cohen. Um, Really, I don't think much except for Mike McDonald of the Seahawks. I think McDonald has a really good chance of being able to um, pull the upset here in this coach of the year. But I think there was a soft spot for Vrabel. I really don't think Cohen and him and McDonald are going to be high up there just because it is their first year. They were playing last place schedules, things like that. So I think that's, excuse me, I think that's going to play a role. Um, Ben Johnson with the Bears, that team still looks erratic to me at times. Caleb Williams still looks erratic at times. Um, they were coming off like an 8-9 season, 7-10 season. So, you know, having to pull out some miracles down the stretch was pretty impressive. But I think they still have a little ways to go. I think some people are not going to see Ben Johnson as a top flight candidate for coach of the year. I know last season he was everybody's darling for coaching hires. People made fun of Leon Cohen and his whole Duval thing. So, but unless the momentum carries over from him being the darling of, the coaching hires last year, I think um, he's really not going to win it. I think this is hands down Vrabel's award to lose. So let's get into some coaching openings. Um, this is kind of going to be an interesting year around the league. When almost a third of the teams fired coaches and have hired new coaches. Um, I think some of the weaker ones out there is like Halfley being hired by the Dolphins. I think Jesse Minter is a good hire by the Ravens. Maybe bring back that staunch defense. Um, Monken just recently being hired by Cleveland seems to be an interesting hire. I don't know that much about him other than, he was a really good OC at Georgia. He was a decent OC for the Ravens, excuse me. Um, so I think him having a head coaching opportunity is why he didn't take the Giants job. Um, I really think um, the best one out there is John Harbaugh going to the Giants. He's got a fairly decent situation. I think if with a good defensive coordinator, they can do something with that Giants defense. Still not 100% sold on the offense, but I think that there is potential there. Hopefully, I think the biggest thing that would help the Giants offense is go out there and find some offensive linemen. Um, to me, that was one of their biggest weaknesses, that and some depth. And I think Harbaugh's just the type of guy who can get people motivated, sort of like Vrabel, and really turn the Giants around. Um, I hate it when ESPN says this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I really think, the NFL is better off when the Giants are good. Just one of those traditional original teams. It kind of pays for them to be good. You know, that's what I kind of enjoyed about seeing the Bears do so well this year as well. Other high, I know some people aren't too high on the Mike McCarthy hire in Pittsburgh, but he's a proven winner. Um, he has had top performing offenses under him. Yes, he's had talented QBs. If he talks Rodgers into staying one more year, that would be pretty great. I think Howard's got potential, but we never really got a chance to see it. He got hurt too soon in the preseason. Um, but I don't think that that's a bad hire. Salah going to the Titans. I think there's a lot to fix there. I don't think we think much of Salah after the first couple of games this year, or excuse me, next year. Let's give him a season or two down there. They just had holes everywhere. I think their record was like 2-15 or something ridiculous like that. Um, that's like whoever the Raiders end up hiring, that's going to be, that's going to be a project. That's not going to be a quick fix either. Other openings that are still out there, the Cardinals. Um, the Bidwell family has always struggled with, keeping good coaches and keeping players there. I think one of the first things that needs to happen out there is Tyler Murray needs to go. He just needs to go elsewhere. Um, some people are saying maybe Kingsbury back. I don't see that happening. I don't see him Kingsbury going to the Eagles as an OC. I would be really surprised if that happened. Um, although Hurts could, thrive in the run and shoot. He did that in college. But anyway, back to, talking about these openings. I really think the Cardinals one is one that's going to be intriguing. There is potential there. There's some talent on the Cardinals. I don't know if it would be a quick fix, but I definitely think they would be a more competitive team going forward. And I know this was a coaching hire last year, but the job that Kellen Moore's done down in New Orleans shows that you can take a team that nobody expected anything from and call them a horrible, terrible team and get that team to play well down a stretch of games, and do something with a rookie quarterback that had some time to develop before being thrown into the fray. Um, I kind of feel sorry for Mendoza going to the Raiders if he is indeed the first pick overall to the Raiders. There needs to be a lot of help. Um, I would almost, maybe if they do take him, I hope to God they spend some money on, free agent offensive linemen, some free agent skill people, um, to give him a lot of help. They have Genty, they have Bowers, but nothing else. So, um, Crosby can make a difference on defense. And they need God, they just need so much help everywhere. So we'll have to see what kind of money they're willing to spend in free agency, um, and see what happens with them. One of the other hires that I do like, again, I was hoping he would end up in Philly as an OC, is Stefanski. Um, Given some talent around him, given a quarterback, he was able to do some things with the Browns. I think if they hold on to Baker Mayfield, Stefanski and Mayfield are still in Cleveland and, they're a perennial playoff team, I really think he's that good. Um, so we'll have to see what happens with the excuse me, with the Falcons. Um, will it be Penix? Will it be Kirk Cousins? Who knows? But I really think that's, I think that should be Cousins' job to lose. He shouldn't have lost it to injury. Um, I think Penix still needs some development. I think he's looked great at times. Other times he looked like a rookie. He looked like a first year starter. So I think, let Cousins start, get those reps with whoever comes in, go into the season with a veteran quarterback, and let Penix develop a little bit more sitting on the bench behind Cousins. Um, is it ideal? Probably not. But I think the Falcons are right there. I think they just need that last little to get over that hump and become a player in the NFC South. Well, that's all I have. I hope you all have had a great week. Um, we'll have more coming to you from the Super Bowl, and we'll go from there. Have a great time.